Thanks, Chef. Hi, guys. I'm totally relishing the heat because it's going to be freezing in New York. So I'm wearing my shorts. I'm really loving being here, and this is such a fantastic facility. I mean, I got to say, for all the food demos that I've done, I think this is one of the best facilities I've ever been in. So thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Hey, April, can I get this? I'm going to start sautéing the onions. So when I met with the publisher to do my cookbook in conjunction with the TV show, I said, I have all these recipes, all my favorite recipes of all time that, I've tried out and they've been true to form in when I'm, cooking for friends or family, entertaining, anything. And I said, so I'll just, literally put those recipes in a book and I will put a little introduction into the recipes, just a little introduction. And she said, no, 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 no. People read cookbooks like they do novels. So they sit in an easy chair and curl up and they read it from start to finish. So this has to be more of a biographical situation or stories that go with your recipes. And I said, okay. So I thought that was really cool. And so I sort of put in, I put in the time to literally start looking through my pictures. That's how I started. And when I looked through my pictures, I realized how important food has been in my life and how my travels have really affected how I look at food. I mean, I found pictures of me, as when I was, 14 years old, eating Wiener Schnitzel in Vienna, and I found myself in pictures at the Great Wall of China having boiled eggs out of this major pot. It's actually a picture in the cookbook. And so I realized that my view of food has been skewed from my travels. That as well as my family traditions. So I had a large Italian family, and it used to always be about food. We would literally, make holiday events out of like sitting at the table, eating before we made the meal, as we're making the meal, having wine and just sharing the experience. And that's what I took to sort of my friends, my extended family, and that's how I live, and that's what this cookbook really represents to me. So it's filled with fun recipes, easily accessible ingredients, leans toward the healthy, but I always step over the bounds every once in a while, and I'll show you one a little bit later that I do. And it's basically very few steps. It's for the people who have an active lifestyle, which we all do. And all my friends had veto power. If they tested the recipes and they decided that there were too many steps or it was too complicated or whatever, they said, it's out of the cookbook. You can't put it in because it has to have fewer steps. So I found a way to, reduce the steps or make it so that they understood it and that they could find it easily accessible. So these are my favorite recipes. And I'm going to start off with my butternut squash soup with goat cheese toast. So as you see, I put in some onions right here in a little bit of olive oil. And then I took a butternut squash, sliced it in half, scooped it out, put it face down on my baking sheet, little olive oil, salt and pepper, roasted it in the oven for about an hour until it's fork tender. And then when I take it out of the oven, let it cool down, and I just basically scoop it out of the skin like this. It's sometimes the skin actually just peels off, but I, in this case, scoop it out. There are a lot of different ways that I roast butternut squash as well. Sometimes I like to steam it. I do the same process, like with a little bit of water on the tray. Other times I dice it up and I'll toss it, like when I'm just serving butternut squash roasted, I'll toss it with like some herbs or olive oil, salt and pepper, and then just roast it like that. So so this is a great base sort of soup recipe that you can add all different ingredients to that I really love because I just use this as a base. And like, for instance, my mom absolutely loves sweets. So when I roast the butternut squash for her, I do it how I told you. I dice it up, and then I toss it with a little brown sugar. And I add actually apples or pears, and I roast the apples and the pears with it. And so when I puree it, it has this real sweet flavor from the pears, and also the butternut squash is a little bit sweet. So she really likes that. And I've been wanting to try. I love for people to try out and like sort of make the recipes their own. I've been wanting to try like a persimmon, a roasted persimmon with the soup, and try out different things. And there are a lot of different herbs. Okay, so I got my onions and my garlic in here. So I'm gonna toss in, and this is literally how simple this is. April, do I have a spoon? Actually, I can use this. I'm gonna use this. So I just toss in the butternut squash. You saw me add the garlic in there. Got a little smaller pan here, so I'm gonna just toss in this butternut squash, reincorporate it. And I'm gonna put in, I just have some vegetable stock here. I'm gonna put in a little bit of the vegetable stock, and then let that all come together. I'm gonna stir it in a little bit. And then all you have to do is, when you incorporate it like this, I put an immersion blender in there. I don't know if you guys all have immersion blenders. If you don't, you can use a food processor. But this is a lot easier to clean an immersion blender than it is a food processor. So if you guys have one of these, it's much easier to do. Okay, so I'm gonna just put this in. So the thing I like about this recipe as well is it's a really great thing for entertaining. I use this a lot because you can prepare it in advance, and also you can freeze it. I make an extra large batch of this, and then I put them in resealable bags, and I freeze them in sort of two serving pouches. And that works out so well because if you have people who come over, for dinner that night, all you have to do is literally just take it out of the freezer, defrost it, and you have your soup already made. And the other thing that I like about the flexibility of this is really that you can use it as a base for adding the other ingredients that I talked about. I talked about adding the pears and the apples. So what I'll do is if I want to have the butternut squash soup, but I want to add a different element to it, I'll literally take those out of the freezer and use that as the base. And then on a separate sheet, I'll roast my apples separately, tossed in olive oil, or my pears. And then I will incorporate them in the same way. I'll just remix it in a food processor, including and incorporating the apples or the pears. So, and I love everybody to sort of think outside the box, make it their own. What goes really well with this, sage and thyme. I serve this with goat cheese toast, but if you don't like goat cheese, you can actually use, ricotta. Ricotta would be really good with this. And so I really love for people to sort of take this and make it their own. All right, so now I'm going to just incorporate everything. I'm going to use a little bit more of the stock. I'm going to do some cayenne pepper, which is, for those of you who like the spicy, this is fine. You can leave this out. Like I said, I really like to encourage everybody to make it their own. If you don't like spicy, you don't have to add this. So pop a little bit of that in there. I'm going to do some balsamic vinegar. I really love to add a little bit of balsamic vinegar because it just really is a good combination. The sweetness of the balsamic vinegar and the tartness really lends itself well to the butternut squash. Right, April? Got a little lemon juice. And I'm going to mix this up and see April's doing that for you. I'm going to put a little bit more of the butternut squash in here because I really like having it a little bit chunky. And you guys are all going to get a serving of this with my goat cheese toast. And for instance, with the goat cheese toast, all I do is just do a little bit of a crostini, which I've put on a baking sheet and a baking rack in the oven toast it up with a little bit of olive oil, and then I just literally slather, a little bit, a dollop of goat cheese like this, and then serve it on the side. So it's as easy as that. I mean, this is a really great go-to thing for, entertaining or families. It's really healthy. As you can see, there's not a lot of bad fats or anything in it. It's very fresh, and it's really a go-to. It's one of my favorite recipes for entertaining. So you guys are going to get a sample of this. So this is my Hawaiian pork shoulder, and I'm going to show you, because there's a really nice ingredient that you're going to like, because it's the liquid that I braise it in, and I'll show you that. What I do is I take my pork shoulder. So now you know that you can braise, pork shoulder, just as is, just like this. But what I like to do is I like to trim off a little bit of the fat. I mean, some fat is good because it's a lot of the flavor, but I don't want too much of the fat. So I'm going to just trim off a little bit of that fat, and I cut the 1.5 pounds into 4 portions. So the recipe calls for 1.5 pounds. I cut it into 4 portions because I want everybody to have their own serving. And I usually serve this on a bed of either, I call it faux poi, which is parsnip and celery root mash. And that's literally, it's in the cookbook, and it literally is just celery root and parsnips with milk. I mean, that's it. And you just mash it up with a little bit of salt and pepper, and it's fantastic. It's a bed for any kind of protein that you do. I use it for everything. The other thing that I use, and this is a common thing that I use for every single protein, is my cauliflower and apple. I was telling you guys about the apple that I roast with the butternut squash. I take cauliflower and apple, and I literally roast it in the oven with a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of salt and pepper. Halfway through the roasting, I add some vegetable stock, and I pop all of that into a food processor, and that's it. And it's funny because that actually I serve in some charity dinners that I cook, and people think it's mashed potatoes, and so people with a gluten issue, they say, oh, I can't have that. It's mashed potatoes. It looks really good though. And I say, you can have it. It's all vegetables. It's like the healthiest thing. So I met this one woman later, in the week or something that was at the charity thing. She's like, I've been eating that all week long, and I've lost like 2 pounds. So it's like really healthy to eat, and it's a real go-to thing. And that's another thing that you can prepare in advance. I do all of those in advance. The day before, I pop them in the refrigerator, and then I reheat them on a double boiler the night that I'm going to entertain. And so then I'm only responsible for the protein, like cooking the protein. So I love being prepared in advance. All right, so this is my canola oil. So I'm going to heat this canola oil, a little bit of the canola oil. And I have a rub here. So this is my seasoning. It's Hawaiian sea salt, a little brown sugar, coriander, cumin, paprika, and just fresh cracked pepper. This is like a total go-to for me. I just love the flavor that it adds. And what I do is I just sprinkle a little bit on all sides of the pork. And so when I put this into the oil to sear it up, I sear it on all 4 sides. So I make sure that it's really locked in there. And I actually season this on all 4 sides as well. So and then what happens at the end is I reserve a little bit of this for when it comes out of the oven after 2.5 hours in the oven, and I sprinkle a little bit on the top of it again and pop it under the broiler. And then you have this real great combination of fall apart tender and crunchy topping, because the brown sugar on the top of it sort of caramelizes under the broiler, and it gets really nice and brown and crunchy. All right, so I'm going to pop this in. So what we're going to do is we're going to sear this up, all 4 sides, and then I'm going to just start incorporating all the different ingredients, and then I let it braise in the oven for 2.5 hours. And it was interesting because this was one of the recipes I did on my show, and it was for a Hawaiian honeymoon. I threw my niece and nephew a honeymoon at my house in San Francisco, and they didn't know it. It was a surprise. So it was a Hawaiian honeymoon, and so I made this dish for them and had like the dancers, you know, the Hawaiian dancers on the roof deck, and like did all this really fun stuff, and made this for him. And my nephew, when I served this, we were going to do the shots of the entertaining shots of the honeymoon that day, and then the next day I was going to do all the cooking in the kitchen because you change it up. You change it up and do you do some of the cooking one day and some of the entertaining stuff the other day. And my nephew, who was there for his honeymoon, said instead of going away on the trip that I wanted them, he wanted to stay around so that he can see me cook this pork again because he liked it so much. And so my niece went off and like went on this like tourist thing in San Francisco, and my nephew stayed and ate some more of the pork shoulder. So that's exactly. So, all right, so this is getting seared up. So what I do is I take it out, I reserve it, I reserve it on a plate, and then I pop in a little bit of my onion. I'm gonna put a little bit more olive oil. And I'm gonna turn this down a little bit to medium. It looks kind of smoky. All right, and then this is just ginger that I've cut up. This is ginger. I haven't peeled it or anything. It's ginger, because what we're going to do with the braising liquid, we're not going to really use it afterwards, just for the flavor. And then with the garlic cloves, I just smash them down a little bit and then pop those in there too. The other thing too, for me at least, and I talk about this a lot, is the entertaining aspect of this. I love using this recipe for entertaining because it's so easy. You just pop it in 2.5 hours. When your guests come over, it stays warm if you need it to. Like, you can just take it out of the oven even after it's done, keep it covered. It stays warm. It's ready to serve you when you need it. You don't have to worry about it. It's really a worry-free dish to serve. All right. So now what I have here is a little bit, actually, here's a chicken stock. So the other thing is you can use a vegetable stock, chicken stock, whatever you want in this. And this is my pineapple juice. So this is the pineapple juice that I use that is sort of my secret ingredient and that people really, really, really love. The other thing that I use a lot of fruit juices because I find it's a natural way to sweeten things and add really special flavor. But any kind of juice that you want, I add it with a stock, like equal parts stock and juice, and it adds a lot of flavor to the protein. So then what I do here is I just nestle my pieces back in, and I'm going to add, hey, April, is there a little bit more pineapple juice? So what I do is I just nestle my little baby little chunks in here, like my little single servings. I'm gonna add a little bit more pineapple juice because I like it to go about halfway up, and then I just pop it in the oven for 2.5 hours, 300 degrees. If you want to leave it all day at 250, you can do that too. I mean, it's not going to get dry. No, okay, it's okay. I mean, we can, I can just show them. Like, so I'm gonna do this and then pop it in the oven, and literally in 2.5 hours it comes out like this. So this is the finished product. I'm going to take off the little string that I've tied it with. You guys are going to get a sample of this too. So then after I take the string off, I sprinkle it with a little bit of the mix again. Boom. Pop it under the broiler, and then this little baby that's fall apart, gorgeously tender, has that nice crunchy topping on it. All right, so the apple filling is as easy as this. It's sliced up apples. These were soaking in a little bit of lemon lemon juice because, you know, to keep them from getting brown. Gonna do a little bit of apple, a little bit of lemon, a little bit of brown sugar, bourbon. How do you like that? I'm a bourbon boy. I love bourbon. I'll do a little bit more. And a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of maple syrup. Smells good though. Yeah, right? Oh, the flour. Oh, I was wondering what the flour was for, but I'm going to go backwards because I'm going to do the puff pastry for you when it comes out. So actually, I'm going to add a little more apple in here because this is smelling really good though. Anyway, so we're going to saute this down. What kind of apple do you use? I'm using a Granny Smith apple in this. And you can use a Fuji or a Gala apple. But what I wouldn't use is a Red Delicious or like a Macintosh apple because it gets too mushy. All right, so you guys, I'm just mixing this bacon in with the apple mixture. And then I cook this down basically until it's syrupy. Gets really kind of gooey and syrupy. So basically, you guys know the pastry dough. It's nice and thin, like that. Flour it a little bit. Roll it out just a little bit. You don't have to really, you know, roll it out too much. And then I just pop the cookie cutter. Just pop these out. Put them on the baking rack. Put the grid over the top, and then pop them in the oven. Easy as that. There's no reason to like make your own. This is a great way to do it. And the other thing that I like using too is I have a dessert in the cookbook. It's almond paste. So I do this one dessert, and I'll brag a little bit because when I was on the Chew, Mario Batali told him that I taught him something. So I made this crostata. It's a berry crostata, and I used this almond paste, and I used it as my crust, and it comes in a pre-packaged little roll. And all you do is cut it into 4 pieces. Do the same thing like I'm doing here. Roll it out a little bit, and I top it with a simple mixture of cream cheese. You can do vanilla, a little honey, whatever you want. I put a little egg in it. I put a little flour in it. And that's literally the filling. Put your favorite fruit on top of it. I use nectarines on the show. You can use berries. You can use pears, peaches, plums. Pop that on the top. Pop it in the oven. And the almond paste gets really crispy and crunchy and like a little burned on the outside, like that brown. So it's really crunchy. But it still has that gooiness on the inside of like what an almond paste or a macaroon would be like. So it was really cool because on the when I was on the Chew, Mario Batali took a bite of it, and I was all nervous. I mean, on the Chew, it's like all these famous chefs are standing there watching you prepare something, and he said, "Mr. Olympic champion, you've taught me something. I didn't know that you could use almond paste like this, and it's delicious." And I think I almost fainted right there. I was like, "Can I use that on my next cookbook?" All right, so you guys can see how this thickened up, right? It's nice and syrupy. The apples are a little al dente, but I like that. You don't want to get them too cooked down. All right, I'm going to turn that off. So what I do is I top it with a little bourbon whipped cream. So that was bourbon whipped cream in there. The key is, the funny thing when I was testing the bourbon in the whipped cream, if you put too much bourbon in the cream, it will not whip up. So it's, obviously different than if you were serving this at a party. And honestly, if you don't want to use the puff pastry, this is great over ice cream. This is great with just whipped cream on top. I mean, this could go in a bowl, whipped cream on top. All right. So this is how I would serve it at a party, like this. And then do a little bit of the bourbon whipped cream. I can actually mix this up a little bit. I want a prettier dollop of the whipped cream, nice and hot. And then my shard of bacon. Thank you. That's it, babies. Beautiful. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed the food. It's been great being here. Next time I'll make you guys a cocktail.
This program is brought to you by Miami Culinary Institute at Miami-Dade College. For more information about the schools and the Culinarium program, please visit www.miamidadeculinary.com or call 305-237-3276.